to the Unleash Success podcast, where we break down the secrets of success to give you real tools and strategies that get real results. And now, here's your host, Corey Corpodian.
This is Corey Corpodian. Welcome back to Unleash Success. If you guys haven't subscribed to our newsletter yet, be sure to go to unleashsuccess.com and just enter your email so you can get all the tools and strategies sent directly to you each and every week. Today, we are going to get our side hustle on. We are lucky enough to have Nick Loper, who is the host of the Side Hustle Show, which is all about helping you start a successful business on the side. Because as Nick says, your 9 to 5 may make you a living, but your 5 to 9 makes you alive. Nick, thanks for coming on the show.
You bet, Corey, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I wanted to talk a little bit about your backstory and how you got into side hustling and turning this into a business.
Oh my gosh, how far back should we go? My original side hustle was a footwear comparison shopping site. So it aggregated the product catalogs from Zappos and Amazon and all these other like online shoe stores, and it would earn a commission when anybody bought shoes through the site. So that was something that I started on the side from my corporate job. I was working for Ford at the time, straight out of school. As a manufacturer's rep for them, driving around to their different dealerships and trying to get them basically to sell more Ford parts to their customers. And that was how it kind of got started. I actually started doing the shoe thing even before that. I was still in college, testing it out on a very, very limited budget, like driving traffic with AdWords, without even a website, like to just specific products. So if somebody typed in like, Nike Shox model XYZ, right? I would put an ad up with that, with my affiliate link in the destination URL, which I don't even know if that's still allowed. You probably have to explicit permission from the advertisers or from the retailers to do that now. But that was how it started, like with a budget of $1 a day, and scaled that thing up all the way to, 3 years of nights and weekends later, like felt comfortable turning in the keys to the company car and quitting the job.
Wow. That's awesome, actually. I mean, because a lot of people rarely get to the point where their side hustle is actually enough to quit their job.
It took a while, but it was like, maybe that was like the naive goal that I had in my mind the whole time. Like this could be my exit. This could be my escape path from the corporate ladder, and working toward like that was really motivating. And not that I hated my job or anything. It was the car business is a fascinating business, but it was always more exciting to do my own thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So what exactly is a side hustle to you, and why do you pursue them?
So to me, it's anything that you're doing outside of your day job to make extra money. And that could be as simple as, delivering pizzas, driving for Lyft. But I think side hustle also has the connotation of like, maybe it has the potential to be something bigger. Like it's maybe more speculative and, more startup-y, more like there's a greater upside than just, babysitting or walking dogs, or delivering pizza. Like all of that stuff, totally fine, totally counts. Like that's, and a lot of people say, hey, look, I just need to make an extra $100, $200 a month. Like that would be meaningful to me. Fantastic. Like go for it. And I think once you do that, you'll kind of get bitten by the bug, and you will say, well, what's the next level? But that's what it is for me. Something you're doing outside of your day job to make extra money. And then with the side of, hey, maybe this could be the vehicle that lets me quit my job.
I love that. I mean, to me, the side hustle, you're right. It's kind of like this opportunity where we have this unlimited potential. As hard as we want to work, we can, make more money, and also to the freedom. The freedom to do what we want as opposed to being told what we have to do at a job.
Right. And I met a guy who was like an anchor on SportsCenter, and who was still doing, trying to build his stuff on the side. Because he's like, there's a ceiling to how much I can earn as a day job. I met an attorney who, was billing $400 or $500 an hour. And he's like, but still there's a ceiling, and I want to be more in control. I don't want to trade time for money. I want to be more in control of my own destiny.
Same thing for me, man. I mean, that's why I started getting into all the other side hustles that I do, is because everything I do as an orthodontist, if my hands weren't in someone's mouth, I wasn't making money. Like I had to be physically there. And, it's crazy. But when you're going through these long years in college and post-college schooling, you don't ever really think about that. And then you get out and you go, this isn't exactly what I thought success was going to be for me. Which, actually brings me to the next question is, how do you define success when it comes to side hustling? And, what are some of your most successful side hustles?
Well, success for me is kind of having freedom over your own calendar and like getting to choose what you want to do each day, whether that's work or whether that's play or whether that's hang out with the family. But that's really what it is. And you can actually start practicing that even if you're still working full time, like you, Corey. But you're carving out time for the stuff that matters to you, and that, in a way, to me, is successful, right? Because it's like, okay, I'm not a slave 24 hours a day. Like I can, carve out some hours to do what I want to do. And most of the time, actually a friend, where did I hear this? Oh, my brother turned me on to this site, optimize.me. Have you heard of this guy, Brian Johnson?
No.
What does he do? Like, I don't know. I'm a realist. He's got, I'm sure, millions of followers, but he's like, all his stuff is really, really well done. He like summarizes every self-development book, every business book, and then he does crazy stuff like how to make sure you don't get cancer. And, it's like all about optimizing yourself. And it's all really, really well done. But one of the things that he shared was like, we have the most control over the bookends of our days, like the very beginning and the very end of our days. And so to use that time intentionally to make progress towards your goals, like during the middle of the day, there's fires to put out, that's most often when we're working for somebody else. And it's just like, we're less in control, but like seizing control of those early moments and those late moments and kind of having a routine for those can be really powerful. So I like that, thinking about like the bookends of your days and taking control over your calendar there as a measure of success.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the way I define success too. It's just freedom to do what I want when I want. If I want to work, I'll work. And I typically, do work pretty hard on these side hustles and my passions. But if I don't want to do something, I want to take a moment to enjoy life, having that freedom, which I've created for myself as well and practice, even though I do work several different types of jobs, that's what means everything to me.
Yeah.
So what's been some of your most successful side hustles so far?
The shoe business had a great run from like 04, 05, 06 to 2014.
Wow.
Started the Side Hustle Show was a great, I was just talking to my wife like last night. I probably have had like 5 good ideas in my life. And I was like, and sticking with you was one of them. The shoe business had a great run. Starting the podcast, the Side Hustle Show was probably another one, which started on the side from the shoe business kind of in early 2013. Coming up on 5 years on that thing.
I saw you just had 5 million downloads total. That's incredible, man. Congratulations.
It's taken on a total life of its own. And it's one of these kind of like Cal Newport, so good they can't ignore you things. Like, don't start the thing that you're passionate about. Start the thing that you're interested in or you're okay at, and it'll become a passion over time. I didn't know anything about podcasting. I didn't, and it's just, it's become something over the weekly practice over 5 years is something that like now I'm like super into. I'm listening to these other shows and like all the, nuanced audio techniques and, maybe I should try that. Or I didn't like it when they tried that, stuff like that. So that's been, that's a very meta example. There's been a handful of other affiliate sites that have done well. One is a virtual assistant review site that actually started in 2011 as a side hustle on the shoe business. That one's still around. That one does okay. Started some freelance editing businesses, some self-publishing stuff, some. I started out house painting in college. Like, there's all sorts of different ones. I did some virtual assistant recruiting for a time. There's I'm trying to think of what some of the fun ones. Like in the past couple years, I was playing around with the Amazon FBA. FBA is fulfillment by Amazon. Basically, Amazon like crowdsourcing their inventory. Say, hey, we built this world-class logistics network. Why don't we open the gates to everybody else? And so you and I can sell your products on Amazon, and they'll store it in their warehouse, and they'll ship it out when somebody buys it. Very, very cool program. We did the merch by Amazon. This is print-on-demand T-shirts, also provided by Amazon. You upload your design. This is really cool. So you just upload your design. It becomes searchable on Amazon. somebody buys it, they print it, they ship it, Prime eligible, and it's like totally hands off. But I mean,
I'm looking into that one. I mean, one, as a side hustle, and two, it's basically you design the shirt and they take care of everything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wearing a merch shirt right now. It says "Make something happen," and it was just a design that my wife made in PowerPoint and put it up there.
That's awesome. So, how do you find these side hustles? How do you figure out the cost benefit? You're putting in time, but sometimes they don't make money right away. How do you figure out what to choose to do? This
is probably the biggest fear, or one of the biggest fears for people starting out. It's like, especially if you're really, really pressed for time, it's like, well, I don't want to waste it. I don't want to spend my time like on this speculative project that isn't going to get me anywhere. So I totally get that, and I've had definitely my share of projects that are dying a slow, quiet death in some corner of the internet too, but probably that's probably the majority of projects, to be honest with you. It's just like, well, it didn't really go anywhere, and it's hard to know in advance, if something is going to work. But there are a few things you can do. Number one, definitely read "Will It Fly" by Pat Flynn.
Oh yeah, I love that book.
In really step-by-step detail, like how to validate a product idea or how to validate a business idea. But there are a couple things that you could probably do even in advance of that. Like if you're trying to start this Amazon FBA business, and the easiest way to probably get started with that is to, go to Walmart, go to Home Depot, right? Look at stuff that's on sale in the clearance section, scan it with your phone in the Amazon Seller app, and you can create a free Amazon Seller account to do that, and see what the sales rank of those items are, because every item on Amazon has a sales rank, which is an estimate of how many units they're moving, or rather, it's a measure of sales velocity, right? So if in a product like toys, the item with its sales rank number 1 is like the best selling toy on all of Amazon, right? And so if the item generally, if it's under 50,000, 100,000, like it's going to turn pretty quick, right? So that is one way to reduce your risk in a physical product business, is like, there's demand. And then you can use tools like Jungle Scout. I think junglescout.com/estimator will give you an estimate of, if there's a specific product in mind that you want to try and recreate or improve upon. You can see, well, how many units are these guys moving, right? And then the marketplace has already validated the demand. So you're not going like straight blue ocean strategy, like, well, this doesn't even exist in the world, I'm going to put this out there. It's like, that's a way riskier thing to do. On like a service business side, this is even easier in a way, because it's like, well, we have this mentality of like, well, I got to come up with a business idea is like got to be, so innovative, so curve jumping, so like never been done before. There's actually, during a chat with Noah Kagan, he was like, dude, how many sushi restaurants are in your town? And I was like, I don't know, half a dozen, right? And he's like, how many of them have been in business for more than a year? It's like, probably all of them, right? He's like, that means probably all of them are making money, right? Like, there's no need to, totally reinvent the wheel. It's just like, oh, you serve a different demographic, you serve a different audience. And that could be for, like in my case, like book editing was one of the freelance services that I had for a while. And it was like, people were already paying for editors. It wasn't like some crazy innovative business idea. It was just like, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and say, hey, I can do this too. Absolutely.
Yeah. So just trying different things. And so, I mean, it sounds like a lot of them just kind of fizzle out. It's interesting because a lot of people nowadays have so many different passions, and, they're trying to just figure out their side hustle. And so what would you say is one of the fastest side hustles that you've seen go from zero to profit as quickly as possible?
Man, it's tough to beat the freelance game, because it's like, you don't need a website, you don't need business cards, you don't need nothing really. Like, I got my first book editing clients on Fiverr. I just put up a gig. I said, I will, proofread your book for $5. And then it was,
you proofread a whole book for $5?
And this was the beauty of it, because in the fine print, it was like every $5 gets you 500 words or something. And every book,
okay.
The book would be 20,000 words. It ended up being a pretty good sized gig. But it was an attention getting title. And then, I don't know, it worked out okay. So that was, testing things on these different marketplaces. Fiverr is one, Upwork is one. There are a bunch of specialty ones, related to I mean, everything imaginable, graphic design and everything. Sorry, go back to the. I lost the question there.
Oh no worries. That's perfect. I mean, things like Fiverr, Upwork, I really like because that allows you to basically start working right away in whatever niche market you're trying to get into.
Okay, we were talking about like fastest ones to get started.
Yeah.
Okay, so the freelancing consulting business, like that's a no-brainer. Like you just stick your flag in the sand and say, okay, I'm open for business. Other ones like you've seen some experience in the Airbnb world, kind of like I'll call it the sharing economy world,
right,
where very little barrier to entry. Of course, with Airbnb, you got to have an asset to rent out, but with services like Lyft and Uber and Rover.com, it's like Airbnb for dogs. There is really very low barriers to entry in all this stuff. Whereas before, if you wanted to rent out your spare bedroom, you'd be taking out an ad in the classifieds and putting a banner, putting a little, yard sign out in your. Whereas they've created the demand, the marketplaces have kind of consolidated the demand in a way that makes it easy for you to set up shop.
It really is too. I mean, I've actually, seen people where if you have a whole house or something, Airbnb might come take pictures for you. I've seen people who have a room, and I've done this too, where we're just leaving for the weekend and we'll put it up. And all of a sudden, it will put it up a week before, and it's amazing how many people are looking for a place to stay. And the day before we're about to leave, we've got to get the house ready. Somebody just, decided to rent our place for the next 3 days, and we're not even there. So it's like no inconvenience to us, really. We do have to clean up a little bit, but we make money while we're, out of town. So it works out perfect.
Yeah, that's awesome. A friend of mine, basically his entire vacation to Costa Rica was like cost neutral, and maybe he even made a little bit of money because it was like, well, yeah, we rented out our apartment while we were gone and paid for our whole vacation. It was like, holy crap, that's awesome.
Exactly. It's actually, I mean, it makes it, you want to do it so much more because you're like, hey, this is a free vacation, basically.
Yeah. Oh, and then you get addicted to it. People were like, well, shoot, you extrapolate that out, I could travel the whole time,
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's funny because one of the big things that I always try to get into is just passive income for real estate investing. And, Airbnb is kind of like that first step into it. And, then I just got addicted.
Yeah. It's like a gateway drug into like landlording, I guess. Right.
Exactly. So
do you have a bunch of rental properties?
I don't have a bunch of rental properties. I just have my one place that we rent out. Okay. But I have invested in real estate flips. My parents were, into real estate flipping years ago. Unfortunately, they got taken out by the market crash in 2006, 2008. But I actually do actively invest in properties, and I'm always looking for one. But to get into kind of more commercial or residential, a buddy of mine who we interviewed a couple weeks ago, he does real estate investing. And so I've invested with him in flips, but we look for apartment buildings because that's kind of the ultimate passive income where you hire a manager and, relatively, or depending on the deal, you can actually create a really sizable passive income check, which for him, he bought something several years ago, had, maybe bought it 8-10 years ago, and he had $400,000 in value add just over the last decade, and it was cash flowing $3,000 a month.
Nice.
So I mean, that's a really big business. It does take more money though to get into it. You've got to have $25,000 to $50,000 to start playing the game of buying property, at least. But there are some ways to get around it where if you can find the deal, you can actually get somebody to lend you the money. Find somebody. For him, he actually borrowed money from his parents for the first deal he ever did when he was 18 years old because no one would give him money. He borrowed the down payment and then got a loan from the bank. And he borrowed their credit as well. Nowadays, he realizes, and I know this too, is just that you can find people who are willing to give you hard money loans if you can get $50,000 or 10 to 20%. So depending on where you live, in Southern California, homes are $700,000-$800,000. But if you live in, right across the way from us is Vegas, and homes are 250, 300,000, you need a lot less money to get in. It just depends on the deal.
Yeah, no, that's exciting stuff to me too. Like I haven't gone, well, it's been a long time since I've gone the direct ownership route. And yeah, it's totally crazy, right? Like I was still in college, I think, and somebody wrote me a loan for $250,000, like no income or, very little income at that time. And it's like, well, that's why the market crashed, because it was just nuts. But, that's part of it. I've gone the route of like e-REITs and regular REITs to real estate investment trust, just to like build some cash flow. And since we're renting right now for our primary residence, just to build some real estate into the portfolio. So that's stuff like Vanguard's, real estate investment trust. That's stuff like Fundrise, and playing around with Peer Street is the latest one there.
Yeah, that's actually a really cool way to start getting into it as well. I personally love the Airbnb because it's able to, you're able to keep your cash and then just save up. My buddy was telling me the crown jewel is kind of like the residential 4-unit, because after 5, it goes to commercial. But you can get a residential loan. You can use FHA. And the most interesting thing that he said to me, which I didn't know, is that they will actually, if people are renting the unit and you live in one unit and you're buying it for yourself, the rent that you collect from the other people living there, they'll actually add to your debt to income ratio. So it's not like you have to come up with $7,000 a month in cash. If they're paying $5,500 of it, you only need to show that you can pay for the other $1,500. So that was the most interesting thing. So it's actually sometimes easier to get those loans for these properties, which are cash producing assets.
Okay, trying to find fourplexes. That's the
crown jewel is what he said.
All right.
Yeah. Cool. So Nick, we talked about this a little bit earlier. It's just the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, which you actually interviewed a guy. Pretty good episode. So we believe in that heavily over here at Unleash Success, just because I'm all about getting results and what actions to take. So 80% of our results come from 20% of our actions. And we talked a little bit about these easy ones to set up, like Uber, Lyft, or, but you're still kind of trading the time for money. And I was wondering if there's any side hustle businesses that maybe require some setup time beforehand, but less time afterwards. And we talked a little bit about the Amazon FBA merch and creating t-shirts. But what's one of your favorite side hustles that we could set up? And I think you said it was a little too soon to do a week, but maybe in a month that we can start making money at. And what would be a step-by-step plan of action?
Okay, for something like this, you've either got to go with the service business route and then outsource who's doing the work to make it a little bit more passive or hands-off for you. You kind of playing the role of manager or focusing on marketing, or go down either the physical or digital product route. But first, on the service business side, the example that comes to mind is Russ Perry from designpickle.com. I first saw Russ, I didn't know it was him at the time, like dancing around in a pickle costume at this conference I was at. And I was like, who's that weirdo in the pickle costume? 2.5 years later, he's doing $400,000 a month in this productized design service, Design Pickle, which is, promises unlimited designs, unlimited graphic design. Will design your Facebook ads, your Facebook images, your Pinterest, whatever it is, your product stuff for a fixed monthly price.
Wow.
And it's nuts. And the crazy thing is, Russ said, look, I sucked at design. Like, it was never about him doing the work, like traditional freelance model, like, oh, I'm a graphic designer, I'm going to set up a graphic design business. It was about him like connecting businesses that needed design help with people in the Philippines who could fulfill the design work. And it's blown up since then, like crazy story. So that would be an example of how to do it on
how did he get these people from the Philippines to do these design work?
So before he was doing this, he had like a full kind of like digital agency, marketing agency, and then niched down to just do the design stuff, because it was like, this is a pain in my butt. Like, I just want to try this one model, and it took off. So that was his, he just played connector basically. I was like, man, this is crazy.
That's I guess another example, $400,000 a month. Wow.
I mean, he's got a huge team and some overhead now, but that was it was just crazy to see how much that has grown in just in 2.5 years since he was, the guy in the pickle costume. The other, on the service business side, John Doherty is out of Denver and runs a site called Get Credo. And he had a background in SEO and online marketing as well. But and he was like, I'm kind of sick of consulting. And so I don't want to do this anymore. What he ended up doing is kind of like a high touch affiliate model where he's like introducing businesses that are in need of SEO help to what started out as his friends or, people he trusted in the SEO industry for a finder's fee. And say like, look, I don't have to do the work anymore. You guys can do the work, but just pay me a flat fee or pay me a percentage. So like that was one interesting way. Like if you have some expertise, you have a connection, or you have certain connections, like to play connector. But on the product side, so when you talk about like physical products, would be the FBA thing, probably the most common route to go, just because that's where the majority of people start their product search is on Amazon, right?
Yeah.
And we've got a couple great conversations with Greg Mercer, who's launched 100 private label products, and a couple of them he's done publicly, including bamboo marshmallow sticks, and like just terry cloth baby towels, or hooded baby towels, I think was the other one. And those two products combined are bringing in $12,000 a month, even after doing them publicly and having a buttload of competition for them because of his stature. But Greg runs a software called Jungle Scout, which he started as a side hustle to all his Amazon business stuff, and it's a really, really cool software tool because it allows you to estimate how many how much these products are bringing in every month. And you don't know their exact margins, but a lot of times you can find those same products on Alibaba or AliExpress and get an estimate of, okay, how much those cost to produce, and say, I could make a tweak to that. And he's got a million filters in there. I want to only search for the ones that have a sales rank lower than this and a review rating lower than this and this number of reviews and, between this price and this price. And to get an idea of what is already selling, what types of margins might be there, it's really kind of cool.
And I've looked at AliExpress too, and that's just an app you can download on your phone very easily to start seeing what the cost of goods are, and it's so much cheaper than you really expect when you're buying in quantity.
Right, and that's the downside. You're gonna have to buy 500 units oftentimes.
Right. But I look at it and I'm like, $2-3 for this that's selling for $15 on Amazon. Is there a hack here?
Yeah. It kind of opens your eyes to this whole different world of importing and like, well, somebody's making that margin. Why not me?
Right. Exactly. So we look at doing the Amazon FBA. If we're not these guys who started in a digital marketing company and then went into design, or we're not really sure how to get started. How do you start something? You don't have an audience. You're just kind of like, you're listening to this and you're saying, hey, I don't have any of these things. I'm just listening to this. Where do I start?
So let's talk about, maybe there's an opportunity in kind of like the digital product space. And by digital product, I usually mean a book or a course. And so the example, we'll talk about books first. So on Amazon, like a lot of different income streams come from Amazon these days, but Amazon allows anybody in the world to publish a book for next to nothing, which is awesome and not as awesome at the same time, because that means everybody does it and there's some competition up there. But it can be to put a product for sale on the world's largest store for almost no startup cost, right? And if you have something that you are an expert at or expert enough at to be able to write a book, like this is one of my favorite side hustles. I've been doing this for years, even before Side Hustle Nation started. And it's just, it was so cool. I remember I got my first royalty check from Amazon, a royalty direct deposit, and it was like $46.47 or something. I was like, nice. I'm a professional author. And it was just like, it was super cool. And, that book has continued to go on and sell like every month since then. And,
which book was it?
That was the Virtual Assistant book.
Oh, okay.
That was my first title, like in 2012.
Wow.
And I've added a bunch, probably 8 or 9 more to the portfolio since then, and gotten smarter about self-publishing, marketing, and stuff. But one thing that Amazon has added in the last 18 months or so, at least that's how long I've been aware of it, is AMS, it's Amazon Marketing Services. So before, basically the secret to book sales is a steady source of traffic and then converting that traffic. And you can get traffic from keyword search directly on Amazon. People are typing in virtual assistant or whatever your keyword is in the title, or what the book is about. Like, they can find it that way if it ranks well. Or you can drive traffic from your own website if you have that, or if you're out on the speaking circuit, you can drive traffic. Like, lots of different ways, right? Mm-hmm. But one way they've added is these AMS ads where you can drive traffic directly from Amazon, and you can advertise your book directly on your competitors' book pages. Like, it's nuts. So they, you can picture kind of like a typical Amazon sales page. Beneath the cover image, they have people who bought this also bought this, and then right below that, they have sponsored products related to this item, and it just looks like another, also bought carousel.
Right, another recommendation. Yeah,
another kind of like little thing of recommendations, and you bid per click, and I typically see, I think lately, 17 cents a click or something like that. So relatively cheap given how well Amazon converts. And if you're targeting the books right, if you have a decent, cover, sales page, or book description, decent reviews, you make sales from that. Like, that's really exciting to me. And
how much, roughly, I mean, it obviously depends on the price of your book, but what are your typical margins for a book? How much does Amazon actually keep, and how much do you make? So
when you're priced between $2.99 and $9.99, you get a 70% royalty from Amazon. Outside of that, you get half that, 35%.
Oh, wow. Big difference.
Yeah, so they are really squeezing the ebook market to where they want it to be, kind of between that $3 and $10 range.
Right. Yeah, they're literally incentivizing you to stay $9.99, because if you're $12 or $15, you actually make less.
Yeah, totally. So that's kind of where they want people to be, and basically the reporting on the AMS ads are awful, because they give you a metric called ACOS, average cost of sale. And you kind of have to, it doesn't take into account your royalty, right? So it's like, well, based on, and some of them are paperbacks. They're like, well, I made $5 on that paperback and $2 on that ebook. And, so you kind of have to back into what that is.
And so when you're paying 17 cents per click, I mean, those people are actually clicking on your book. What's the conversion rate that you see, and how much money are you making off that 17 cents?
So a typical average cost of sale, right, would, I try and keep it around 20 to 30%. So that leaves you, another 20 to 30% margin, maybe 20, closer to 20% margin on top of that. So basically, you're able to drive profitable traffic and keep your book up in the sales rank. Like, you're driving continual sales, which helps in keyword search and all sorts of other stuff, categories inside of Amazon. So I'm a fan of that program, but we should probably also talk about kind of like the course model, because courses can have a much higher price point. You're not incentivized to go to, $9.99 on the courses. And there's probably a couple examples that come to mind. One is Vincent Puglisi, who is a journalist. He's a professional photojournalist, photographer guy, and he had no audience. Spent his life taking pictures, right? What he ended up doing, and he was making just crazy story. Right? He was mid 30s, 6 figures in debt, baby on the way, making $15 an hour, just being like, this is not going to work for me. Like, what am I going to do? And his dad says, look, you have this skill, you're just not using it right. And he's like, why don't you shoot weddings? Why don't you shoot corporate events? He's like, dude, I'm a journalist. I don't do that crap. And, ultimately the motivation of having a baby and getting rid of all that debt, he's like swallowed his pride and went out and did it. But what he ended up doing was partnering with a guy who did have an audience of people who were interested in learning photography. And what they specifically did was a course on how to take better sports pictures of your kids, like how to capture that, winning touchdown, winning, soccer goal, or, the home run at T-ball and stuff like that. and they sold 30 grand of it on day one, and they continued to launch it since then. So Vincent went from earning 30 grand a year to using those same skills to earn 30 grand a day, which of course he had to split with his partner. That was one way to do it. That's
one good way to do it, I'd say. Wow.
That's one good way to do it. Yeah, I just love his story. Another guy who kind of comes to mind is Jacques Hopkins, who teaches a course called Piano in 21 Days, actually pianoin21days.com, where he teaches people how to play modern songs on the piano in kind of a new and innovative way. And how he was driving traffic was through YouTube. He's got a couple YouTube videos that rank really well for, piano learning terms. And that drives traffic back to his site, which he, had to set up. I think it was originally like a Weebly or a Wix site. So pretty, drag and drop, simple to do. And then he started buying traffic with Google ads. People are typing in this very intentional search, like, how do I learn piano? Well, here's Jacques' ad. He gets them on the phone. He closes the deal. And it was, just a relatively simple process. And when we spoke, he'd done like 20 grand in the last month, and, had quit his engineering job to do this full time. And it's just another kind of inspiring story, like outside of the, I guess both of those are kind of outside of the make money online space.
So a couple things come to mind. And I forgot to mention this. I actually have done a demo course before, and I used the software Teachable. And, because somebody might say, well, I don't have a website. I don't have a course. I don't have a YouTube channel. I don't even have an audience. Some people have 100 followers on Instagram. And they're like, that's just not enough.
Right. Well, and that's where Jacques went for his audience, was like, YouTube has an audience. I'll put a video there. Google has an audience. I'll put an ad there.
Right. That's great. So also we talked about Udemy as well as to drive traffic. Because I'm just curious, like sometimes I see a YouTube video and it's got 15 views. Did he, how did he get people? Was it just, oh, you're paying for ads, but how do you know to put out the money there? Does the same thing, have you seen the same thing with Udemy? Where Udemy, do you have to pay for ads, or do they automatically advertise for you?
Udemy is a lot like Amazon in a way, where if you can kind of give your course, so Udemy is a peer-to-peer online education platform. You can create your course, put it up for sale. They've got like 15 million students or something. Like, they've got a big built-in audience as well. What I've seen there is similar to Amazon. Like, if you can give your course a nudge, the algorithms can kind of start working in your favor. And a nudge being social proof in terms of enrollments, reviews, basically those two things, students and reviews. And then the algorithms can kind of start to work in your favor, because it's a search engine, just like Amazon, just like iTunes, just like YouTube, right? People are searching for courses on specific topics. And then, Udemy does a good job of promoting the courses, often heavily discounted, which I know turns off some instructors, but, it's passive income. Like, I've had a course up there for, probably over 3 years, and they still send me money every month. Like, it's awesome, and for very little time involvement.
What's Udemy, the name of your course again?
It's the best-selling one is the Kindle Launch Plan.
Nice, to get the books. So now you're collecting money off of a Kindle Launch Plan course, and you're collecting royalties off of the 8 or 9 Amazon books that you have.
Yeah, which kind of came just as a result of so I did this book launch a few years ago, and it did really well. I got like 20,000 downloads. It went on, it's gone on to sell, really well since then.
Wow.
And so I wrote up this here's how I did my launch, and put that on a guest post on another author's site. And, the comments were like, dude, this could be a book in itself and stuff. And so, it was just the reaction to that post. It was like, well, shoot, maybe I should try to turn this into a course, because I had a couple guests on the Side Hustle show that were talking about, being a Udemy instructor. I was like, well, let me give this another shot, because I tried a course on there and it, didn't really do anything. So I was like, oh, let me try this again with something that I know has some interest, I know has some demand. So that was one. And the other inspiring Udemy story has got to be Teresa Greenway, who teaches people like how to bake the world's best sourdough bread. It was like a totally random niche, but she's got a dozen courses up there. When we talked, she was making $4 or $5 grand a month with this stuff. She's built a huge Facebook group, probably the world's largest privately held Facebook group on the topic of baking. Those are her tribe, she says. She just, a really, really inspiring story. She's a mother of 10. Kind of 10 kids, escaped an abusive relationship. She told me she was filming her first course like in her like dingy garage because that's what she had. She's like, look, there's a lot of close-ups of my hands working the dough because I don't want to zoom out. I don't want people to see like the oil-stained floor, kind of the nasty setting that I'm in. And she just like, start with what you have when you have it. And just I just love her story.
I love that. Start with what you have when you have it, because you know what? Everybody wants to wait for something to be perfect, and it's never going to be perfect, no matter how hard you prepare, how hard you work. So you just got to start. And speaking to that too, the other thing that kind of comes to mind when talking about writing a book or creating a course, I've had this own struggle in myself too. Is just, how do I get over the fact that, you know, I've got this knowledge, but I'm afraid, are people going to really trust me? Are they going to think that, you know, I'm just this fraud? Or am I really good enough to create a course on this? Have I proven myself enough? How do you get over that?
So this is kind of where, like, if people are asking you questions on the topic, like they already perceive you as an authority. And you kind of have this, you know, I've heard people call it the curse of knowledge, or you kind of take for granted what you already know. But I mean, so you know a ton about teeth, and like that's probably like a super obvious example. But like you also know about, you know, hosting people on Airbnb and starting a podcast and all this other stuff. Where it's like once you do it, you kind of like, you know, now I know how to do that. But it's like other people might be interested in that stuff too. So I wouldn't stress too much about, you know, being the world's foremost expert on a topic.
Yeah, okay. I like that too. We do take for granted what we know because sometimes we think everybody knows this already. Isn't it obvious? And so even just providing value, I think about just the Airbnb. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I could definitely write like a very simple course. And if I sold it for $10, I mean, it would definitely be worth it just with the knowledge that I have, even though I'm not an expert in Airbnb at all. But I've had some interesting experiences where one guy left the door open for 24 hours. That was a nightmare. But, you know, how to prevent stuff like that, and you kind of learn along the way, and sharing that knowledge. Very interesting. I kind of like that as a way to start up a side hustle, to build something that pays dividends even 3 years later, like you said, or 8 years later.
Yeah, it's really cool to kind of build these assets and just keep getting paid.
Absolutely. So I'm curious too about if there's any kind of habits that you have as you create this freedom in your life. How do you stay focused and motivated on these side hustles when they look like they're kind of crashing and burning, but you want to keep pushing?
What's the rule? The rule is when you come to dread the work, it's time to move on to the next thing. Like that's been kind of the telltale sign for me, where it's like, this is not doing it for me anymore. And so there's been a ton of businesses that have either shut down, or like just the revenue just didn't justify the investment, either in time or effort to keep it going. So for me, like it's really motivating to see results. And so that's where it's like, even as something as simple as like signing up for Lyft, or signing up for one of the popular ones lately is like VIP Kid. It's like you tutor kids in China, like how to learn English. And it's just, super simple. And it's like, I don't know, it's empowering to say, okay, I'm making money outside of a day job. Like, I didn't have to necessarily put on a suit and tie, like go through the whole interview process for this. It was just, I don't know, like that's very empowering. I've seen that in the businesses that I run, even in the businesses that my wife has run with the t-shirt thing, which mostly her designs for the t-shirt stuff, let's be real. And the photography business that she runs too. It's just, I have worth outside of what it says on my business card. I have worth outside of what it says on my paycheck. And that's been really empowering.
I love that. It is so empowering to be able to work for yourself and take control of your life in a lot of ways. I'm curious too, just about side hustling. What are some common mistakes that you've seen people make when they're trying to side hustle, but they're just not following through? And how can we avoid that?
The biggest mistakes, probably the biggest mistake. Well, there's the meta mistake of like just kicking the can down the road, like never getting started, thinking of trying to find the perfect business idea, which, there is no perfect business idea. But where a lot of people seem to get caught up is in the, like, call it the admin stuff. I was like, well, I need a website, or I need business cards, or I need, a business license, which, I definitely recommend getting a business license, at a certain point. But like before you can figure that stuff out after you have customers. Like don't put yourself through the headache of trying to figure all that stuff out, beforehand, where it's like, that might not even be the business that you end up keeping. Like, don't stress about that stuff.
It's funny you say that business license. When you go to apply for a business license, they ask you how long you've been in business for. And so you can actually be in business without a license. You just have to end up paying for it eventually. You just tell them, I've been in business for the last 30 days.
Yeah, just backdate it. And until you earn a certain amount, like it makes probably more sense from a red tape perspective to run things as, depending on what you're doing. Like there's obviously some like liability benefits for setting up an LLC, but tax wise, there's no benefit to doing that. So you might as well just run as sole proprietor until you earn a certain amount. And then there's some, moving money around you can do with like an S corp election, but don't stress about that stuff at the beginning.
Right. Don't get caught up in doing all that admin stuff before you've even sold a customer a product or sold anything to anybody.
Yeah.
And any other mistakes too that we can avoid? I'm just curious. I mean, that's definitely a big one. People are just kicking the can.
Maybe on the opposite side, like investing way too much money. Somebody sent me a note. They're like, I spent $30,000 on my website and it's almost ready, and it's been 9 months. I'm like, oh my God, why? I'm sure it's going to be the world's most beautiful website, but that just stressed me out to no end.
Yeah. Wow. I just got anxiety myself.
Yeah. Because it's like, you don't know if anybody is, looking for what you have to sell. Like, I don't know, if you got money to burn, I guess go for it, line the pockets of some web developer, but that one stressed me out. The other one is like just trying to keep, just like a general life rule, just trying to keep your overhead low. And so if your if your rat race freedom comes when your business income or non-job income exceeds your expenses, it's easier to do that if your expenses are low.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I know you end your podcast with this a lot on the Side Hustle show, and I'm just curious what your answer to this is. What's your number one tip for side hustling?
Find your why. Figure out why you want to do this, because it's harder. It's harder than sitting on the couch and watching Netflix, and there's got to be a powerful reason to keep you going.
Hey, man, this has been an awesome conversation. I do have 2 more questions for you just to wrap this up. One, where can we find you online? SideHustleNation.com is the best place to find me. If you hit SideHustleNation.com/ideas, if we didn't talk enough about ideas to get you started, hopefully that will get the creative juices flowing over there. And of course, we'd love to have you tune in to the Side Hustle Show, available on iTunes or wherever fine podcasts are sold. Absolutely. Definitely one of my favorite podcasts to listen to, always giving me new ideas. And I think your 99 list is up to 114 now.
It keeps growing.
And great. So, Nick, you've created an amazing amount of success with the Side Hustle Show and the freedom. But for you, what is your next level of success?
Man, next level. I've been thinking a lot about this lately and trying to be more intentional on, where you spend your time, like just trying to get, I don't know, it's like, I don't want to say get out of the day to day, because like I do love the work that I do, but like there's probably some stuff that I'm spending my time on that I shouldn't be. So trying to be smarter about that, and then figuring out, okay, what do the next 5-10 years look like? We've got this young family right now. My wife is still working, although, talking about, does she need to, where do we want to live? Like there's all sorts of kind of life questions that are up in the works these days.
Well, that's awesome. Creating your dream life. It sounds like you're well on your way. Nick, thank you so much for coming on Unleash Success.
You bet, Corey. Thanks for having me.
If you guys enjoyed the show and learned something of value, the one ask that we have is please go subscribe. If you'd like to leave us a 5-star rating and review, that definitely helps us get our message out there. Because each week I'm going to interview amazing people, and I want to be able to give you more and more tools and strategies that get you real results. Feel free to connect with me on Facebook or Instagram at Corey Corpodian, or just visit the website at unleashsuccess.com. Remember, knowing is not enough. Knowledge alone is not power. Action is. Because action is the only way to get the results you want in life and truly live the life of your dreams. So go take some action, subscribe to the podcast, and get ready to unleash success in you.